If you try this method and it doesn't work for you,
get in the comments!
Today, I want to tell you the truth about game reviews so you don't fall for the hype or be surprised when that amazing, awesome game comes out that you've never heard of. And if you don't believe me, next time you hear about a game, go through this list. So today, what I'm going to do is explain to you the 3 things you really need to know that I need to know whenever I'm doing a game review that will tell you 90% of what you need to know about a game. And in order to do that, I want to start off by just talking about a couple of games. And let's see if you guys can't figure out what these 3 things are that will tell you most of what you need to know. And the reason I'm doing that is because there are creators out there with over 1 million subscribers who still don't know these things. So today, that's what I'm trying to inform you about and help you be a better consumer, help you not fall for the hype and not be surprised when that next major game comes out or get tricked by some game along the way that was never going to be good to begin with. So let's start off and talk about Baldur's Gate 3. This was a huge success, game of the year last year. Massive game. Everybody loved it. But Baldur's Gate 3 is by Larian Studios. Larian Studios has been making computer RPG games for decades. And the most recent ones were Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. And each one of those games was a massive improvement on the other, right? They were improving as they went along the way. Yes, there were still bugs, but the scope of the game for the size of the development team was huge. There were also really interesting and fun features that were included into it. The spellcrafting system, you could take 2 spell books, and instead of learning them, you could roll the dice, combine them, and you would get a third spell that would maybe be very different from both of the other spells. This was an incredible, amazing system, and it's just one example of the many systems they had, as well as being able to really fulfill on the tabletop role-playing promise of being able to play how you want. If you wanted to be a villain, you absolutely could. If you wanted to be a hero, you could. If you wanted to be someone who was much more, whatever the way the wind is blowing, I'm a soldier of fortune, you could absolutely do that. And there was a lot of interesting, dark, and adult themes as well in many of those games. So when Baldur's Gate 3 came out, it was no surprise to me that it was an amazing game. Now, it was a surprise that it became so popular that other people found out about it because of the Dungeons & Dragons brand, but that they made an amazing game was not at all a surprise to me. Now, let's talk about Starfield, something maybe on the other end of the spectrum, okay? Maybe not that extreme, but definitely on the other side of good, I think, for most people and by its popularity. Starfield is a game by Bethesda. Bethesda has been making games like Fallout. The Fallout series is by Bethesda. Elder Scrolls, as well as the online version is by the same parent company, Bethesda. And so these are games that, historically have been amazing games. I played the original Arena, I played Daggerfall so much, and every game since then. But we've seen, and similarly with Fallout, right? We've seen through over the years that the quality of Bethesda has gone down for sure. Most recently with their game Redfall was a disaster. And Bethesda has almost coined a term of endearment for having bugs in their game. They call it jank. And so there's the Bethesda jank in their games, but they excuse it. They came up with a term of endearment for their games not working properly, which is kind of odd. It's okay when you're a small company, but when you become a large company, it's kind of like, why haven't you fixed these bugs? We've seen this recently in the Elder Scrolls Online. While it is still a very popular game, it is nowhere nearly as beloved as the single player games, right? And so when Starfield came out, there's a lot of anticipation. A lot of people wanted to love Starfield, and a lot of people still do. I'm not knocking the game if you love it, but I would say overall, most people have not loved the game. And because the trajectory of the company has been going down, and that's something you really want to keep an eye out. Other things to keep in mind is, when you look at Larian, all the people at Larian have been there for a very long time, and they love it, and they want to be at that company. When you look at Bethesda, they've bled a lot of talent along the way. Actually, Tim Kaine, who worked on Fallout, the 1 and I believe 2, and then he bailed, I believe, he does YouTube videos. And you can go watch his videos about what he did and about his job and his role and everything else, and about how eventually the company just wasn't a game company for him. And you can kind of see the trajectory of the company. And that's one of the other things you need to look at. Okay, so let's see if you guys have kind of figured it out. Let's go ahead and walk through these 3 things. So first off, you need to know who the company is, okay? The company behind the game. And the reason is you want to know about what other games that they have made, right? Have they made pay-to-win nightmares? Are most of their games pay-to-win nightmares? Then guess what? The next game is probably going to be a pay-to-win nightmare.
NCSoft's
all of their previous titles up until this have been really bad when it comes to monetization.
You know, is some of their other games, or did they have jank? Right? Were there a lot of bugs in that game? Because chances are there's going to be a lot of bugs in this game. And I would actually say that that's true about Larian as well, but you could see increasingly less bugs throughout the story of their games. Other things you want to look at, like Arrowhead Studios. They're the game company that has most recently made Helldivers. Well, they've made other games in that universe, and while they were totally different styles of game, the community that they had really enjoyed those games. And so they also had good things to say about the developers. So whenever they made a new game in a new different style, you kind of had this, you know what, it's probably going to go pretty well. Have people left Arrowhead? Are they bailing, right? Are they getting out of there? Or are they doubling down and going, no, we want to continue to make great games at this company? So the company and the history, who's working there, that kind of thing is what you really want to look for. The second thing is trajectory, okay? Where is this game company heading? Are they getting better or are they getting worse? Because very rarely do you stay the same over long periods of time. Blizzard, right? Activision Blizzard, been going downhill for quite a while. So when they come out with a new game, Diablo, you want it to be good. We all want these games to be amazing. We want them to be the newest thing, but you're also not entirely surprised when it's not, right? Because, you know, the way World of Warcraft has been going and what have you. So momentum, where a company is heading in the right direction, in the wrong direction, is really the second thing you need to consider. And with that, you know, have there been recent changes at the company? Have they been purchased by somebody else? Because, you know, bigger companies only purchase smaller companies because they think they can turn a profit on them, which usually is bad for the consumer. And so that's absolutely the case with all recent games in history. There are some exceptions. Sometimes they buy companies because they want to corner a market, in the case of Sony and Microsoft fighting over various game companies, but it's still often bad for consumers. Okay, well, that's all well and good. What's the last thing here? The last thing is what kind of game they're making. And what I mean by that is, what are they telling you they're making? And does that match up when the final product actually gets here, right? If a company says they're making one game, and then along the way, all of a sudden they're making a different game, and then you hear about them adding features that sound like a third style of game. We can see this most recently, I would say, with Throne and Liberty, where it was a totally different game, and then they said it was going to be one game and it's another game, and it's very confusing, right? And actually, this is one of the games that got me turned on to this, because Force Gaming covered it. And at first he said, oh, this is going to be the most amazing, game, that seems very hyping it up, right? And then more videos, and eventually, oh, I'm very concerned. And this is something, no offense, but Force does quite a bit of, where it's like, oh, this is going to be the amazing game. The thing is, if you look and you say, who makes this game? And if you find out that it's NCSoft, and they're known for making horribly monetized games that are pay to win or just monetization nightmares, you go, you know what?
NCSoft's all of their previous titles up until this have been really bad when it comes to monetization.
It doesn't matter how good the game is, because the monetization is going to ruin it. And so you don't really need to know anything else, right? And sure enough, that's exactly what turns out. I would note that this game is already live in Korea, even though it has like a September, I think, release date here in the US. It's not going to be what you want, right? Because you know that it's an NCSoft game and you know what they make. Starfield, for example, right? Again, we saw with Redfall coming out right before Starfield that it was a total mess. And it's like, whoa, what is going on over there at Bethesda? So when Starfield comes out and there's a bunch of bugs, the game isn't nearly open world like it claimed to be, right? You're a space exploration game, but really there's nothing to explore. You're not entirely surprised, because the game right before it was a total nightmare. So these are the three things you really need to look for that will tell you 90% of what you need to know about a game. Now, the last 10% is absolutely crucial, right? You don't have a game review without the last 10%, okay? And the last 10% is the actual game. Did they fulfill the promises that they made as the style of game they made? Does it have all the features? Is there new and innovative stuff? How is the polish on the game? Is it just fun to play, right? Because you can tick a bunch of boxes, but then put it all together and you're like, this isn't actually fun to play. That's the last 10% that is absolutely crucial, and you do not have a game review without it. But you can decide 90% of what you need to know about a game and have a pretty good idea if it's going to work out by just knowing those three things. And if you don't believe me, next time you hear about a game, go through this list. Check out the company. Check out their what kind of company is it? What have they made historically? What have you? What is their trajectory? Okay. And then what are they claiming they're making? Does it make sense? Is it the kind of game you want to play? And then when it comes close to launch, did they fulfill on those things? Is this the kind of game they said they were going to make? And I promise you, not 99% of the time, this is all the information you need to know. And let's do this. If you try this method and it doesn't work for you, get in the comments.